Hey, I'm here with the lovely Amy.
Oh, hello, lovely Karen.
I was just giving you a big dose of the dimensions, wasn't I, Amy? The fourth
Yeah, yes,
dimension.
you were, Karen. Yes.
And Amy's probably like, I don't know what
I'm
to say.
It is very mind-blowing, but it's
Because they say that
very
you can't
fascinating.
see the fourth dimension. So,
Right.
how are you supposed to explain something you can't see? But I've been following this guy. He was called Free Anarchy, but he's now called the Square Earth Cosmology. And I don't know if you'll even remember me. I wanted to hang out with him, but it never happened because he was just trying to show people the concept of the fourth dimension and the other things. And people really attacked him because some of his diagrams weren't maybe quite to scale, and they really attacked him. I feel really sorry for him because he was just trying to show the concept, and he's
Yes.
very into the fourth dimension and everything else that we
Yeah.
are. Anyway, that's his channel if everybody else is interested, and we're just going to play a couple of his videos because, well, they're quite amazing. I played this one today. I don't know why I'm on that one and that one. But I'm not sure why some of the other, because I've watched a lot of his videos, and in the past I've made videos out of his videos.
Yes.
Yeah, I find him very interesting. Anyway, Amy, do you want to say anything?
Oh, I just think it's going to be fascinating, and it'll really help people to think about this.
I'm
So
not.
I'm glad you did it.
I was trying to explain to you, Amy, wasn't I, that I now
Yes.
realise that England is lying on its side, so it pushes
Mm-hmm.
Africa and everything round. But I don't know how that affects the time and the light, because obviously there are these waves of light from the sun rather. I don't know how it affects that.
Right.
But anyway, I find him very interesting. Amy will watch it and she'll probably think, "Oh my God!"
Yes.
But it is
Yes.
hard to explain because we just watched the Flatland. He was from the 1960s, where he was explaining if you were a 1D person, you'd be able to sort of go forwards and back, but you'd never be able to go up. And
Right.
if somebody from another dimension comes along, like the apple, who was a third dimensional being, then the Flatlander can't see him. He can only sense him, and he gets a feeling. He
Yeah.
knows something's there, but he can't see it. And even if the apple landed in front of him, it won't be an apple to him. All the person in the first dimension to a third dimension will see is the points that the apples touched the ground. So there'll be like
Yeah.
four dots. So if something's in another dimension, we're not going to see it.
Right.
And I think that obviously the sun, I don't know, when we were in, years ago, we were saying that maybe it was in the 10th dimension.
Well,
Do you get what I'm saying, Amy, roughly?
yes.
Even if you can't see it and
Yes.
understand it, draw it and the whole thing. So we're never going to see things the way that they really are because we can only see in the third dimension. Even though I've said this repeatedly, we're multi-dimensional in our bodies. We can breathe, talk, walk, eat. We can do, and then we can think, which is the higher dimensions. We're doing all these things
Yeah.
in different dimensions, but we can only see in the third dimension.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to explain, but so even if you saw something in another dimension, you're not going to see it in that dimension. You're just going to see a point of it and know that something's. I mean, when he was saying that, it did. I said that we weren't going to go on, but when I saw that, it reminded me a bit like when we feel other people. We can feel them, but we can't see them because
Yeah.
they're in another dimension.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Poor Amy, she's had her mind blown now. She only came to talk to me. But anyway, Amy, is there anything you want to say? Shall we finish now?
Yeah, I like having my mind blown.
By
Great.
me, Amy. By me.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is quite,
Yes.
if I show you we were watching, hang on. So Amy and I were watching this guy. He explains the fourth dimension very well, and I might just put the bit with the apple in, Amy, and then we'll play the video, because if you were a one-dimensional being, you don't see the third dimension. You only sense something's there, and you only see points of it. You don't see it. So if the sun's in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever, we're never going to see it the way it really is.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we progress with the video, Amy?
Oh, yes, Karen.
And thank you, my beautiful Amy, for helping me. Poor Amy.
Oh, you're welcome, my beautiful
Yeah, coming
Karen.
on and hang out whether you like it or not.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
Oh, thank you, my darling.
You're welcome, my darling.
Everybody in Flatland is, of course, exceptionally flat. We have squares, circles, triangles, and we all scurry about, and we can go into our houses and do our flat business. Now, we have width and length, but no height at all. Now, these little cutouts have some little height, but let's ignore that. Let's imagine that these are absolutely flat. That being the case, we know, us Flatlanders, about left-right, and we know about forward-back, but we have never heard of up-down. Let us imagine that into Flatland, hovering above it, comes a strange three-dimensional creature which, oddly enough, looks like an apple. And the three-dimensional creature sees an attractive, congenial-looking square, watches it enter its house, and decides in a gesture of interdimensional amity to say hello. Hello, says the three-dimensional creature. How are you? I am a visitor from the third dimension. Well, the poor square looks around his closed house, sees no one there, and what's more, has witnessed a greeting coming from his insides, a voice from within. He surely is getting a little worried about his sanity. The three-dimensional creature is unhappy about being considered a psychological aberration, and so he descends to actually enter Flatland. Now, a three-dimensional creature exists in Flatland only partially. Only a plane, a cross-section through him can be seen. So when the three-dimensional creature first reaches Flatland, it's only the points of contact which can be seen, and we'll represent that by stamping the apple in this ink pad and placing that image in Flatland. And as the apple were to descend through, slither by Flatland, we would progressively see higher and higher slices, which we can represent by cutting the apple. So the square, as time goes on, sees a set of objects mysteriously appear from nowhere and inside a closed room and change their shape dramatically. His only conclusion could be that he's gone bonkers. Well, the apple might be a little annoyed at this conclusion, and so, not such a friendly gesture from dimension to dimension, makes a contact with the square from below and sends our flat creature fluttering and spinning above Flatland. At first, the square has no idea what's happening. He's terribly confused. This is utterly outside his experience. But after a while, he comes to realize that he is seeing inside closed rooms in Flatland. He is looking inside his fellow flat creatures. He is seeing Flatland from a perspective no one has ever seen it before to his knowledge. Getting into another dimension provides as an incidental benefit a kind of X-ray vision. Now our flat creature slowly descends to the surface, and his friends rush up to see him. From their point of view, he has mysteriously appeared from nowhere. He hasn't walked from somewhere else. He's come from some other place. They say, for heaven's sake, what's happened to you? And the poor square has to say, well, I was in some other mystic dimension called up. And they will pat him on his side and comfort him, or else they'll ask, well, show us, where is that third dimension? Point to it. And the poor square will be unable to comply. But maybe more interesting is the other a direction in dimensionality. What about the fourth dimension? Now, to approach that, let's consider a cube. We can imagine a cube in the following way. You take a line segment and move it at right angles to itself in equal length. That makes a square. Move that square in equal length at right angles to itself, and you have a cube. Now, this cube, we understand, casts a shadow. And that shadow we recognize. It's, ordinarily drawn in third grade classrooms as two squares with their vertices connected. Now, if we look at the shadow of a three-dimensional object in two dimensions, we see that, in this case, not all the lines appear equal. Not all the angles are right angles. The three-dimensional object has not been perfectly represented in its projection in two dimensions, but that's part of the cost of losing a dimension in the projection. Now, let's take this three-dimensional cube and project it, carry it through a fourth physical dimension. Not that way, not that way, not that way, but at right angles to those three directions. I can't show you what direction that is, but imagine that there is a fourth physical dimension. In that case, we would generate a four-dimensional hypercube, which is also called a tesseract. I cannot show you a tesseract because I and you are trapped in three dimensions. But what I can show you is the shadow in three dimensions of a four-dimensional hypercube or tesseract. This is it. And you can see it's two nested cubes, all the vertices connected by lines. And now the real tesseract in four dimensions would have all the lines of equal length and all the angles right angles. That's not what we see here, but that's the penalty of projection. So you see, while we cannot imagine the world of four dimensions, we can certainly think about it perfectly well. Now, imagine a universe just like Flatland, truly two-dimensional, and entirely flat in every direction, but with one exception. Unbeknownst to the inhabitants, their two-dimensional universe is curved into a third physical dimension, maybe into a sphere, but at any rate, into something entirely outside their experience. Locally, their universe still looks flat enough, but if one of them, much smaller and flatter than me, takes a very long walk along what seems to be a straight line, he would uncover a great mystery. Suppose he marked his starting point here and set off to explore his universe. He never turns around and he never reaches an edge. He doesn't know that his apparently flat universe is actually curved into an enormous sphere. He doesn't sense that he's walking around a globe. Why should his space be curved? Because there's so much matter in this universe that it gravitationally warps space, closing it back on itself into a sphere. But our Flatlander doesn't know this. After a long while, he'll find he somehow returns to his starting point. There must be a third dimension. Our Flatlander couldn't imagine a third dimension, but he could sure deduce it. Now, increase all the dimensions in this story by one, and you have something like the situation which many cosmologists think may actually apply to us. We are three-dimensional creatures trapped in three dimensions. We imagine our universe to be flat in three dimensions, but maybe it's curved into a fourth. We can talk about a fourth physical dimension, but we can't experience it. No one can point to the fourth dimension. I mean, there's left, right, and there's forward, back, there's up, down, and there's some other direction simultaneously at right angles to those familiar three dimensions.